The Inquisitor had gone into the Undercity to try and find out where the Xenoists were coming from. And since their first venture into the underground proved unsuccessful, she decided to go back. This time, enlisting Cain's assistance and pulling a little bit of a dirty dozen. She decided to use the perpetrators of the mess hall riot. Now, these individuals had been consigned to a penal legion, which was essentially a death sentence. This mission was little better than a suicide mission, but at least it was better than certain death. Cain was none too happy about the situation. The prison characters are your basic disposable characters. You have the dispassionate sniper, the troublemaker, and the like. Although I feel sorry for the person named Kelp. No wonder he's so bad. He's named after seaweed. Upon descending into the sewers, they come under assault by the Tau. After a few shots are fired at one another, they come to find out who each other are and decide to team up in order to find out just what is lurking beneath the city. Joining the Tau are a number of Kroot mercenaries. Cain met one of these creatures while he was fighting the Mel Gibson Xenoists. A Kroot is essentially a large blue bird. They eat their enemies after they kill them. And so our stalwart heroes flitter about in the Undercity for some time, and then they finally encounter a checkpoint along the way to their unknown destination. They use this checkpoint to finally figure out where it is they're going, because now they know there is indeed something down there. After dispatching the individuals there, the Kroot begin their daily meal. The humans and Tau present are rather disgusted by this, but the Kroot pay it no attention, until they realize that the meat they're consuming is 2 degrees off temperature. Well, not exactly. Apparently, the Kroot can taste the genetic structure of whatever it is they eat. Well, not exactly that either. It says it can taste something similar to the genetic structure. So when they consume the hapless checkpoint guards, they say that the meat is tainted. And this, of course, means that there's going to be an enemy called the Tyranids make an appearance. The thing is, the audience doesn't know that, because most likely the people who read this book will have never read a Warhammer 40,000 before. So the whole suspense of the issue really stands out. And also, here's another thing in the reverse suspense, because it says, I knew what she expected to find down here, and it was all I could do not to turn on my heels and run screaming for the surface. I mean, now you know something really big's about to go down now. So after wandering about for a few more minutes, our stalwart heroes finally come upon a massive chamber filled with gene stealer hybrids. Essentially, a gene stealer hybrid is a human being that's been implanted with some Tyranid biomass. A Tyranid is basically a more evolved version of the xenomorph from the movie Aliens. And gene stealer hybrids are actually worse than your baseline Tyranid, because gene stealer hybrids are still human enough to use human weapons, which means they can actually shoot at you instead of just run at you and try to slice you to pieces, even though Tyranids that just run at you and try to slice you to pieces are usually more successful than not. The prospect of fighting such a foe causes a great deal of fear in the various soldiers present. No more so than good old Mr. Seaweed Man himself, Kelp. He says, You knew what was waiting down here all along, and you read us right into it to get slaughtered. And then Cain snaps back, No one's getting slaughtered unless I do it. And then Vale says, We'll only engage in self-defense. Satisfied? Well, it satisfies everyone else except for good old Mr. Seaweed, who decides to simply leave, leading Cain to say, You'll never get away with this. Like I've never heard that before. Thankfully, Cain mentions that his entire line of, You'll never get away with this, sounded like something out of a bad holodrama. Also, the reason why nobody shoots Kelp as he walks away is because they would make too much noise and thus bring the Tyranids right on top of them, which becomes a problem in just a few moments. When that bloody blue idiot Gorok says, They taint the flesh, and they must not taste ours. And then Cain mentioned something about his bowels freezing, which I really don't want to know. Really, it would be quite embarrassing to defecate yourself in the middle of a battle. The thing is, right after Gorok says those words, he and the rest of his compatriots charge directly at the massive army of gene stealers and are promptly turned into finely sorted mush. Luckily, the humans are a little bit more intelligent and decide to run in the opposite direction. However, in the midst of this mad dash to the surface, Cain somehow gets separated from the rest of the group. It seems that in books and movies, whenever you turn around after a fast-paced run, everyone just somehow teleports. Now, as he tries to wander back to the surface by himself, he comes upon good old Mr. Seaweed. Cain and Mr. Weed decide to fight, but luckily, the sounds of their scuffle bring Amberly Vale and the rest of our Star Wars heroes down onto their position, and thus this most troublesome weed is finally removed. When Cain says possibly the coolest line ever uttered in any book or movie.
Jurgen, kill him! What? Right, Commissar.
I mean, really, it does not get any cooler than that. Just Jurgen, kill him. 3 words. No more, no less. Although, there is one thing that is kind of nauseating. He mentions a pile of steaming offal. I mean, really, they didn't have to go into that much detail. So after a few minutes of dithering, they finally realized that that gunshot was probably not only heard by them, but the rest of the massive Tyranid army. And so they decide to form back up and try to get to the surface. Well, they encounter more Tyranids, and they are split up again, except this time, Cain is with Vale. And they finally go about explaining what is actually going on. It turns out that the Gene Stealers have pretty well infiltrated the PDF and the local government as well, meaning that they were in a position of power to drive the Imperium and the Tau into a war. That way, when the Tyranids finally got there, both sides would be pretty well softened up. So Cain and Vale continue wandering along for a short time longer until they finally reach a cellar that will lead to the surface, only to find a Gene Stealer temple. And within it, they find the Hive Patriarch, which causes a
boss fight!
I tried to twist out of the way, leaving room for her to aim, but the failing multiple limbs of my bloated antagonist had boxed me in, and it was all I could do to keep parrying frantically with the chainsword as it swung one talon-tipped arm after another after me. Die, damn you, I cried as I tried to bring my pistol to bear, but I could not spare the concentration for the more urgent requirement of staying alive. My entire attention was on ducking, blocking, and searching for an opening. As I continued fighting, I sprang back a fraction of a second too late, and felt talons scrape across my ribs, ripping through the armor beneath my coat like cheesecloth, and burning like fire. I swore, and struck back at the thing, taking the hand which had wounded me off at the wrist. Ichor pumped from it like a fire hose. After turning my head to ensure that the ichor did not splash into my eyes, I saw Jurgen running across the floor, and after striking it again, I cried out, "What does it take to kill you, you bastard?" And then Jurgen stated, "How about this?" and jammed the melter rifle into the wound I had made in the beast's belly and depressed the trigger, thus killing it. After that rather stirring boss fight, Cain and company found themselves on the surface in the governor's mansion, and it turned out that the governor was indeed a Gene Stealer hybrid, and that he was the one who originally shot the Tau ambassador. Also, 2 of the soldiers that went with Cain were found again, alive, at least until Cain shot them both. Upon further inspection, it turned out they had been infected with that bloody Tyranid biomass. So, after dispatching those 2, Cain and Vale sat down to a nice dinner, with a nice toffee cream dessert. Oh, that sounds wonderful, doesn't it? And also the Tau pulled out as well. But not only that, some of the Tau were infected with that Tyranid biomass as well, so confusion to our enemies and all that. And so, our novel draws to a succinct and rather proper close, with Cain no doubt engaging in some rather vigorous activity with Inquisitor Vale. So one could indeed say,
Mission complete!
And there you have it. Book 1 of the Ciaphas Cain series. For the Emperor is just a really great novel. It's able to create characters that are actually interesting to read about. It's able to mix action and humor really well. And also, it's able to have real suspense, because these are characters you actually care about and you want to know what happens to them. Now, while the suspense is indeed of the reverse variety, it's still there and it's still good. Be sure to check back later for Book 2 of the Ciaphas Cain series, Caves of Ice. But for now, this is General Watts wishing you good. Hail to the Empire. Good. First strike. Or whatever makes you happy.